You are listening to the Inspiring Your Shine podcast, where you will be empowered with the truth to live authentically, abundantly, and on purpose, taking you and your business from surviving to thriving by helping you be authentically you. Hello, it's Rebecca, and I am here to talk with you today about how to get back on track. So possibly you can relate to what I have recently went through, and that is when you get completely off track from the goals that you had been pursuing, and now you have gotten so far behind that you're feeling overwhelmed and you don't even know where to start to get back on track. Well, I'm here to help you today because this has happened to me. We recently moved after living in our home for 11 years, and I had no idea what I was going to be up against. I really didn't have the awareness of how much stuff we actually had. I truly thought our house would never be empty. And then when we were moving in, I didn't realize the work that it would take for us to get organized at the new house. I completely underestimated it all, and I had some launch dates for my course. I had just launched my podcast. I had committed to doing this podcast every single week, had a complete plan. But this is how life goes. Things happen. We underestimate what will be required of us. Life happens, and we have to constantly be able to get back on track after we have gotten off track. And I know that this happens even in a diet or even in relationships sometimes, that we get caught up with something and we neglect certain areas of our life. So I'm hoping that me sharing with you how I was able to get back on track and the process that I went through will help you when you need to do the same thing. So there were so many different things that happened that kept me from getting back to work. A couple of things were that our dogs were in a new environment, in a new home without a doggy door. They had had a doggy door all of their lives, and now we've moved them to this new place, and one of our dogs is 17 years old, and she is half blind and deaf. She was completely confused. It was like having an infant. So for the first 4 weeks of us living in our home, we did not get more than 2 or 3 hours of sleep at a time because she would be whining and waking us up and we'd be taking her out. It was just a nightmare. First problem was lack of sleep, which that right there is enough to cause a lot of problems in your life. The next problem I had is because things were not organized, I could not find my microphone. I think maybe I accidentally donated it. It was in my car and maybe they grabbed it. I have some vague memories of loaning it to someone. I don't know, but I didn't have my microphone and I spent days and days looking for it. Finally had to break down and go buy a new one so that I could have the right tools that I needed to get back on track. But the first step that you need to do when you've gotten off track is that you have to give yourself grace. That is what I had to do because I was beating myself up for missing the launch date that I had put out there. I should have changed it, but I really didn't know what I was up against. I was nervous to change it because I had already put it off and changed the date in the past, and so I wanted to just press on. And sometimes that is the reaction that we feel like we should have, is we just need to work harder, push harder. What ended up happening is the harder that I tried pushing to make myself do the things that I needed to do, when I still needed to deal with organizing my house and the very thing that had gotten me off track was still not wrapped up and complete, I was beating myself up so bad. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to stop beating ourselves up. We need to give ourselves grace and love. And instead of pushing harder and beating yourself up, maybe what we need to do is actually rest and renew from whatever it was in our life that got us off track in the first place. Because when you feel good, then you can do good and you think clearly. But when you don't feel good, when you're beating yourself up, when you're under a lot of pressure, when you're stressed out, when you're irritated and angry, this is not the time to push harder. These are warning signs that are telling us it's time to rest and renew and to figure out what your next steps should be. Because when your emotions are high, you cannot think clearly and you will not make good decisions. Now, as I'm recording this, I am in California and I am here to rest and renew. It was supposed to be a celebration of me launching my course, but instead I am still allowing myself to enjoy my time here to rest and renew. And this is the first time that I have gotten sleep since I have moved into my new house for longer than 6 hours straight. So it is amazing. But one other thing that I recognized is that possibly I was beating myself up and I was using the excuse of me moving into the new home and all of the craziness that was going on with taking care of all the different, landscaping and fencing and all of those things. Was I really just using those as an excuse to avoid launching my course because of fear? I had to face myself with that question. And I have to tell you that a little bit the answer was yes, because it is very scary to put myself out there and to give all the things out to the world that I have created, because you always have that feeling of what if it's not enough? What if somebody rejects it? And the fact is that there will be times that you put things out into the world that people will reject it. So I just want to pose the question to you is, whatever has gotten you off track, whatever has distracted you, is it possible that you are welcoming that distraction subconsciously because you don't want to face whatever it is that you need to be doing because of fear? So I knew that that was something that I needed to face for myself. So I do have a new launch date, and I actually have people waiting for me now at this point to launch my course. So it definitely will be launched. It's just a matter of finishing those little techie tasks that I've been avoiding and getting over myself so that I can serve the world. Because as long as we stay in our own fear and allow ourselves to feel small and unworthy, then we aren't putting ourselves out there to serve the world. So in a conversation with my daughter, Morgan, she helped me to realize, which is step 2, is I was over dramatizing my situation. I was complaining about all the things that I wasn't getting done, and I was frustrated and mad at myself, being negative, complaining. And my daughter made me stop and she said, "Mom, I want you to right now start telling me what are the things that you have gotten done." So I began to tell her all the things that I had been working on and what I gotten complete that were things that didn't have anything to do with my business but had to be dealt with. As soon as I began to express the things that I was doing right, the things that I was taking care of, then I realized that, my goodness, I was beating myself up, but it wasn't as though I was sitting around watching TV or that I was doing nothing. I was very busy. It just was that I wasn't working on the thing that I felt I needed to be working on. So she helped me to see and acknowledge that what I was going through, this season that I was in of settling into the new home, was temporary. And it wasn't going to last forever. And I needed again to just give myself grace so that I could take care of what I needed to take care of, wrap it up, and fully focus on my launch. So the chances are whatever you are going through that has distracted you, it's a season and it's temporary. And we don't want to over-dramatize it and think that it's never going to end. And I promise you, you are going to find your way through the weeds of whatever situation that you're in right now. And if you just stay determined and don't give up, even if you're behind, even if you have these self-imposed pressures, the world can wait on you. Because life does happen. And there's no reason why you can't still do that great thing. You can't still get back on top of your business at a later time. We are not in a race. We have to learn that just because we're feeling we are on this certain timetable doesn't mean that that's really true. I have found that everything that happens in your life is for a purpose. And honestly, I have learned and grown so much through this process. And it was a magnifying glass to the way that I was still treating myself unkindly. The very next step to start getting back on track, after you've given yourself grace and stopped over dramatizing and acknowledged yourself for what good you've done, then make a list of all the things that you need to do. So all of those pressures that you're feeling, all of the things that you are feeling unsettled about, just start making a to-do list. Write it all out. Just let yourself completely unleash all of those hindrances that are inside of you. But then the thing that you need to do next is you have to determine what is that big thing that you need to be doing in order to move yourself forward the fastest. You need to maybe make up a little bit of time for the time that you were off track. So you don't want to start playing small. This is the time for you to be bold and brave and take that big step. Have you ever seen Brian Tracy's work on Eat That Frog? And it's get those big things out of the way first. Because we want to try to mess around with the piddly things and we don't get to the big things, and then we are just as frustrated even when we start working again. So eat that frog, do the biggest, most important thing, the thing that's going to move your business forward the fastest first. And then the other thing that I had to do was I needed to create a space that I could work in. And for me in particular, I had just moved into a new house and things were completely disorganized still. Particularly my office had tons of boxes and like all the junk drawer boxes that we brought from our house were in there, and they were very overwhelming to me. So my daughter gave me other great advice, and she said, you have to clear a space for yourself to work. So maybe one of the reasons why you are delaying on getting going and you know exactly what you need to do, what might be holding you up is you haven't created a space, a physical space for you to work and be productive. So I had to clear out the room that I would be working in and make it feel good physically so that I could mentally do what I needed to do. And lastly, the thing that I recognized is really when it comes down to it, the thing that we need to do to get back on track is we have to recommit. We will never get anything done if we don't fully commit to doing it. So I recommend that you commit to getting back into action. Write on your calendar when you are going to be handling that thing that's most important. If you remember from other episodes, create your tiger time and protect that time to get those important things done. And what I found is once you get going, then you start to get in the flow again. We have all this resistance to getting back on track, to getting going again. Whether it's dieting or having that hard conversation to make that relationship right, or doing the phone calls in our business, or like me, getting back to doing the techie stuff that I needed to do to release my course. Whatever it is for you, I just want to encourage you that once you get going, it's going to feel so good and you're going to get back into flow. So even if you have to kick your butt a little bit and do these steps that we've talked about, and just to reiterate, those steps are, first of all, give yourself grace. Stop pushing. Allow yourself to rest and renew. Recognize and be honest with yourself about if you are having fear and if you're allowing it to hold you back. Focus on what is going right and what you have done, and be grateful for all the goodness in your life. Acknowledge it's temporary and don't over-dramatize your season. Write out that list and eat that frog and get into action. Create your space so that you can work in an environment that feels good, and recommit so that you can get out there and make the difference that only you can make. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that this helps you. As always, I'm going to create a worksheet for you to be able to take these steps to getting back on track. So make sure that you check out the full description, and that is where you're going to find that link to get your download. So thank you so much for listening, and I will look forward to seeing you on the next podcast. If you enjoyed and found value in this podcast, would you mind leaving me a review on iTunes? And I would be so grateful if you shared this with a friend. Thank you so much for listening.